The two speakers are Amanda Dyer and Nigeri Eaton. Amanda's master's project was entitled Dead Cemeteries, and Nigeri's was entitled Perry County. And I believe Amanda is first? Great.
Hi, guys. Hey, I always thought that following Kochi was like following the Beatles, so you're going to have to give up a little something, something. All right. So, for a couple months now, I volunteered for this position, but for a couple months now, I've struggled with what it is I could possibly say to you guys. What could really sum up this 2 years of hard work and camaraderie and uncertainty? So instead, I decided to relate to you a couple of stories that have been emblematic of my time here, and hopefully they're a little familiar to you guys too. The first comes from before I even started school here or even thought about applying. I was about a year out of college, and I found myself in my parents' living room. And I was explaining to them why I had decided to quit my decent-paying job to learn how to become a journalist. And I was telling my father, my normally really understanding and supportive father, that I was going to do this, and he sat in silence for a few seconds, and then he said, "I can tell by your face you're kidding." And then my younger brother, who will be graduating from law school next Saturday, said, "I can tell by her face she's not kidding." There's no doubt we've decided to enter a difficult, underpaid, and somewhat unpopular profession at a time when any sane person would have taken up accounting. But we didn't take up accounting. We chose a line of work that, although unstable, allows us a glimpse into the lives of people we would have otherwise never known. Experiences we would have otherwise never had, and bring to the public's attention issues that might have otherwise never been talked about. And although we might be so wrapped up in our work that we might have, say, sent your calls directly to voicemail, or skipped out on family functions for last-minute interviews, or maybe even forgotten your birthday, the fact that you're all here today means that you've chosen to support us or maybe humor us while we chase something that satisfies us rather than just pays our bills. And for that, I can't thank you enough. But we haven't always been so confident in our choices. I'm sure all of you remember our first day here, but for everybody in the audience who wasn't there, what happened on our first day is we were sitting in the library, which is now the overflow right now, and we had to all get up and kind of justify why we were here, or introduce ourselves and tell everybody a bit about the work we were doing here. And of course, this was a perfectly easy way to get to know each other, but that's not what most of us were doing. Most of us were sizing each other up and figuring out where we fit in. And by the time it was our turn to get up and say a little something about ourselves, we were already convinced that the school had made some sort of mistake, that we weren't supposed to be here, and sooner or later, everyone was gonna find out. I mean, we heard from an Iraq War veteran, a former fire captain, students that came from Africa, Asia, the Middle East, book authors. That day, I was sitting next to Casey Miner. I had met Casey a couple weeks before school started while working on an assignment for our Intro to Reporting class, and I had known her just long enough to say that she was brilliant. Casey had already graduated from Yale and worked for a national publication and was once Jack Hitt's research assistant. So when Casey stood up to introduce herself and started fidgeting and looking at the ceiling, I thought, well, if Casey's nervous, then I'm really in trouble. But as time wore on, I think we learned not only to recognize the strengths of others, but to recognize and appreciate our own strengths, and to realize that we do or did, in fact, belong here. There are still days when I think, oh, if I could write like Jordan or Wes, if I had story ideas like Dara, if I could produce web packages like Tasneem, if I could groom facial hair like Nick Burns. But more often than not, when I think back on these 2 years and all the amazing work you've all done, what I mostly feel is lucky. Lucky that I got a chance to meet all of you, to see your work and be inspired by you. Which leads me here to my last point. For the last couple of years, many people have warned us about the gloom and doom surrounding our industry, the lack of jobs, the uncertain future, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And really, I have to thank these people because it would have been irresponsible not to tell us about this, to have us go through our careers with our head in our clouds only to be woken up one day with the layoff slip. But as a colleague, I would like to offer you some very humble advice. Keep those thoughts in your head long enough to stay grounded, but really focus on the fact that you have the ability to reach the top tiers in this industry. Remember that everyone here has the capacity to write best-selling books, to produce work that wins Oscars and Emmys and Pulitzers, and most importantly, to affect change in the communities you cover. That's how I want you guys to think of yourselves, because that's how I've always thought of you. And when that happens, look back, because I'll be riding your coattails. Thank you to the faculty and staff who have all made this possible, and congratulations, you guys.